Confessions of a Film Poser!
Did you know the average price to purchase a home in 1979 was $62,900? Did you also know that apparently 87% of all homes purchased on the eastern seaboard in 1979 came with spooks, specters, and ghouls lurking in attics or basements, ready to terrorize families and inspire classic horror films? No, I'm serious. I'm serious. It's totally an absolute fact. Which brings us to this week's movie, The Amityville Horror from 1979. The film is based on a true story, or so they say. Here's the breakdown. In 1974, Ronald DeFeo Jr. murdered 6 members of his family in their home at 112 Ocean Avenue, Amityville, New York. A year later, George and Kathy Lutz bought the house at a discounted price and moved in with their 3 children. After only 28 days, the Lutz family fled, claiming terrifying paranormal activity, strange noises, foul odors, moving objects, and ghostly visions. Proof, once again, that just because the price is right doesn't necessarily mean the spiritual warfare is. The Lutz family story became the basis for Jay Anson's 1977 book, The Amityville Horror, and the 1979 film adaptation of the same name. Skeptics argue the haunting was exaggerated or even fabricated, while believers see it as one of America's most famous supernatural cases. The film was directed by Stuart Rosenberg and stars James Brolin, known for roles ranging from Herman, P.W. Herman, to Barbra Streisand's husband, to the father of a Goonie. Margot Kidder, widely recognized as the original Lois Lane in the 1978 film Superman, stars as Kathy Lutz. The Amityville Horror is famous for its slow-burning suspense and creepy atmosphere, rather than traditional gore. Iconic imagery includes levitating objects and chilling supernatural events. The film has since become a cultural touchstone in horror, inspiring numerous sequels, remakes, and references in pop culture. So Vince, yet again, why haven't we seen this? I thought that this movie and The Conjuring were the same story, and they're not.
Different stories. Do you know, have you ever seen any of the remakes? Or I think I read the book of this a year or two ago.
I've never seen this movie. This has been one, like so many others, that I just like, I've never prioritized. I'm a big movie monster guy. And I love like slashers and all the 80s and 90s and 70s like horror films with like a big bad, so to speak. And so the supernatural movies don't really do it for me. There's a handful that I enjoy and I think are good, but you know, I've gone over it before, so I won't hammer it home, but it all depends on how they handle the supernatural element of this. It does make it even creepier. And I believe there's an Unsolved Mysteries episode surrounding this and like the actual murder that took place.
I believe so too, yeah.
And so I believe I've seen that. And so that's kind of my general knowledge. But no, I've never seen any of the remakes. I know that there was one, I think it was in 2005 with Ryan Reynolds.
Yep. It was good.
I know that there's been a bunch of sequels and like a kind of like low budget, straight to DVD back when that was a thing. Sequels to this movie. So I generally know it's like a creepy haunted house story, but yeah, I thought up until recently it was the same story as The Conjuring. I believe the Warrens, who are like the characters in the Conjuring universe and were real people, I think they had some involvement with this, but in just doing some like blanket research, I wasn't able to kind of find the connection. But yeah, so I'm expecting this movie to be slow. I mean, everything I've read on it says it's a slow burn. But so is Carrie.
So I've seen the remake of this, and I read the story, the book that I believe you said this movie's based on.
Yeah.
And the way that they kind of sold this story was that it was real. So it's kind of cool to get a chance to watch this. I don't know. I don't think I've seen any James Brolin movies.
Yeah, you have.
Have I?
I've seen
Pee-wee.
Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I mean, that's honestly he was in another movie. Was it Capricorn 1 or The Right Stuff? I think it's called Capricorn 1. And that was a movie that came out in 1978. It's him, Elliot Gould. And it's a movie about them going to space or something along those lines. I don't remember much from it. It's been a while since I've seen it. But that's the only other than it, like, and that he produced Josh Brolin, which I've seen way more of his movies than James Brolin.
Me too.
But my reference point is always him and Pee Wee Herman, and that 20 seconds he plays the James Bond version of Pee Wee Herman is hilariously funny to me every time.
So
I'm putting that in the intro to this video just because I can and want to. But It's so good. That whole sequence is amazing. But no, I know that he's kind of a leading man. I want to say he got started on like soap operas or something. Let me do a little James Brolin deep dive
Yeah,
and
I
see
know
what
that
he
he's
was in.
a very handsome man, and
Yeah.
is why I think that they chose Ryan Reynolds for the remake, just because they wanted the scene where he takes off his shirt and chops some wood, dude. If you like this movie, I hope that you go back and you watch that remake to see, and I'll probably do the same to see how well they did. I feel like I never watched this movie because I would always prefer to watch Poltergeist. Were you a Poltergeist man?
Dude, I love Poltergeist so much. I love pretty much all. I love all three. The third one's not as good, but I love the first Poltergeist movie. That's an absolute classic. I'm expecting this one to be a 70s movie. 70s movies are usually a little bit more slow. Also, James Brolin, where I also know him from, is Westworld, the original Westworld movie with Yul
Oh,
Brynner. Fantastic movie, and
yeah,
that stupid series didn't do it justice. I'm excited to watch it, dude. I hope we
me
get
too.
some spooks in this one. This is our second movie in the month of October. So I hope it's worthy. We were kind of let down with Carrie, so I hope this one brings us back. Are you ready to send it over to future Vincent Eli?
I'm ready, dude. Let's do this.
Boo. Ah!
Ah! What's up, buddy?
Hey, dude.
We're back.
Welcome, future Vince. I'm future Eli, and we watched Amityville Horror, and that's another one under our belt, my man.
What number
And
is this? 6?
this is going to be, I believe, episode number 8. We're doing this one a little early
Oh,
because I'm going
oh,
on
okay.
vacation, but this is going to be the second week of October, second Sunday of October. Hope everybody out there, if you're watching this, I hope you're enjoying the month of Halloween, which of course is October. Some of us start a little bit sooner than that, but I think October is like the acceptable Halloween month, right?
Yeah, October is the month that I bust out all the like the true Halloween movies. I do all. I've already started all the Aliens. I'm gonna hit up all the Nightmare on Elm Streets, all the Jason, all the
Heck yeah, dude.
Halloweens, dude.
Okay, well, that's a great segue because let's get into the movie of this week, Amityville Horror. We finally watched it. Where does this movie fall? Does this movie fall? Because I thought a lot about that while I was watching it. I think this is a fun movie that you could throw on during the Halloween season. And yeah, it has some moments that are really fun and a cool, creepy ghost house. Your thoughts? Like, what do you think in terms of the pantheon of horror classics?
I think this movie. I can see why it's well known and like the whole true story, which I've been doing like a deep dive of the actual story of the family that went in here and what actually happened. There's a lot of people saying that it maybe wasn't as real as I was led to believe. But when it comes to this movie, I thought it was a really good like. Would it be? It's not possession. What? It's just haunted house. Is that what this would be considered?
Yeah, I mean, and there lies your question. Therein lies the rub of this movie for me. And it, outside of throwing it on as like a good horror, creepy season movie, it wasn't a great all around movie. And I think your question kind of falls into that perfectly. Yeah, it was a haunted house story, almost like in a very traditional sense. It kind of tickled the toes of some larger supernatural themes, some larger biblical themes, as we've talked about before. But it didn't quite go all the way there. And I got to be honest, I'm still a little bit confused by what I watched.
I would also say that I think this is the rare time that I like the remake better.
Mm,
This movie's pretty dated, and we can get into this movie, but I think if you haven't seen the remake, which I think you said you haven't,
no.
it's worth a watch. More watchable movie than I think this was for me at least.
Yeah, it's very much of the time it was made. The 70s. It was like because I had just watched The Conjuring for the first time. We've talked about it a little bit before. I feel like in these movies, so essentially, let's get into what the movie is. The movie is about these murders that happened at the address I said it's like Ocean Avenue, which always makes me think of Yellow Card.
Yeah.
But Ronald DeFeo Jr., I believe his name was, killed members of his family. This family moves in. as the movie itself starts progressing, and yeah, going back to what you said, I've read stuff on here that said like the guy that killed all these people was like on drugs, and
Yeah,
there's external like things that contributed to the story, which this movie kind of plays into a little bit and then just goes nowhere with it. But I'll keep going on that. So it kind of gets into the biblical themes. You know, again, we have a Catholic family. They're newly married. They're moving into this house. It's the first house they've ever owned. George and what's her name? Do you remember her name?
I know it's Mrs. Lutz. Let me
Yeah,
see.
I know.
Kathy Lutz.
Kathy Lutz, played by Margot Kidder. Ooh, I will say the strongest part of this movie is the performances from Margot Kidder and James Brolin. They
Yeah,
really carry this movie in a way that if they didn't, this movie would be far worse than it actually is.
totally.
But
They're a handsome couple too, man.
dude, you know what as I was watching it, young James Brolin looks so much like Christian Bale that there were moments that I just thought I was watching a new Christian Bale movie, or it was almost like AI went in and like put in Christian Bale, and there were so many scenes where he like looked at the camera. But yeah, his performance is so good, and it really, you know, the script does his character dirty and her as well. But they move into this house. There's this great opening sequence, and when I saw this sequence, I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be a good movie." When they're looking at the house before they buy it, and they're kind of having banter back and forth, the chemistry between James Brolin and Margot Kidder is really good, and they're kind of teasing the real estate person. She's got 3 kids from a different marriage, is what I put together,
Yeah,
and he's the stepdad. And so he even makes a joke at one point where they said like, "Oh, we're newlyweds, we just got married," and then he drops the line that they have 3 kids together. So there's this great scene, and as they're going through the rooms, it keeps cutting back between the murders in these very rooms that they're looking at and present day of the Lutz couple that is looking at this house to buy, which that was great. I mean, that was like filmmaking wise, that was fantastic, and it made me kind of really excited for this movie. And so they move in, weird stuff starts happening. You know, 70s horror, dude, they just like they will cut into frame and they won't show you what happened. Like if this was a modern movie, for instance, and this is jumping ahead, but when they come in the room and the crucifix is upside down, like if that was The Conjuring, you would have had a camera that moved all the way from the living room into the kitchen and you would just see it in the background, and it would be
totally.
far creepier.
Or you'd have the camera flip upside down to signify the upside down cross or
Right,
something.
exactly.
Something artistic, which
And
this movie
yeah,
did have some artistic shots.
they did, but this kind of reminded me. This reminded me very much of the last movie that we watched, Cobra, which I know that's a weird thing to compare, but it did remind me of that movie because I sat there watching going, there's a better movie in here somewhere. And in this movie, I kept waiting for the payoff that just never came. But there's just a lot of 70s direction and cinematography. I would have loved to have seen George Lutz, what he was like as a stepdad before he starts making the turn of, I guess, being possessed by the house. But they're in the house. They move in with the kids. They're out back playing. A priest comes to bless the home. He doesn't see the family, so he just walks right in the house.
Which I
And
thought was
doesn't knock.
such a weird. I thought I missed a scene because it's
Yeah,
just him walking into the house and going upstairs to like the exact room that's the issue. Which,
yeah.
like, yes, he's supposed to have like a feeling for it, but it's not like that room was like drawing him in. He was just like, "Oh, let's go check out this room." Flies.
Right. And the interesting thing is in this movie, like the possession, I guess if you want to say, or the ghost or the entity are really the interesting thing is they're kind of displayed or they're kind of shown as sickness instead of like a possession. There's one scene where one lady gets kind of possessed who's like the medium or whatever. But the priest goes in and instantly gets sick, and there's flies that accumulate on the window, and he bails. He leaves the house. He's like, "I'm out of here." And the whole time he was leaving, I was like, "Dude, you gotta tell him about the flies. Like, you gotta shut the window before you leave.
Something, dude.
Don't let in this whole fly colony." But he didn't.
Well,
He pieced out.
yeah, that kind of leads into my issues with this. I know you're breaking down the movie, but he gets sick. He leaves. I don't even know if they ever were even aware that he showed up to begin with.
They were
But
later on when the younger
okay.
priest, when she
Oh
calls
yeah.
looking for that priest, the younger priest says, "No, he was there a couple days ago."
So the main priest, Father, what is it? He already knows that this house is an issue. This house is the reason why he's sick. He heard the flies tell him to get out. I feel like he didn't do enough to warn this family.
It's Father Delaney.
Delaney. He didn't do enough to warn this family at all, dude. Throughout the entire movie. Which I know he has like a whole bunch of stuff going, and then he also has to deal with we'll get to it, but he has to deal with like the Catholic Church pretty much shutting him down. But I thought for sure he was going to go above and beyond to save this family, and instead he was just like, well, I gave him a call, the phone cut out. I'll try to go there when I'm feeling better. Like, he's just allowing this family to get eaten up by this house, dude. And I thought it was kind of a weird choice.
See, I didn't run into that because, like, the problem I have with movies like this is that you want to play with the religious aspect of this. And so, therefore, you're dealing with the devil, with Satan himself. And the heroes that go against Satan are either people of faith or clergy of faith. And so the problem I have is anytime you introduce a priest, it's like I would never go to a priest to come cleanse my house after watching, because cinema has made it to where like priests don't ever have faith and they never have power over these entities, which the Bible literally tells you, like, you know, you do have dominion over these evil spirits. That's the point of the, you know, that's the point of a lot, but that's the power you have through the Holy Spirit. Christ tells, you know, his disciples,
faith,
they have,
right?
What?
So it's kind of the point of faith, right?
Right. And Christ literally, because they go to Jesus and they're like, hey, there's a possessed man. And they're like, well, you could do it. You could remove. So that's what they're playing footsie with. But they never want to commit to that. It's always like, oh, these evil spirits have dominion or more power. So that's what they were getting across. I didn't bump into that as much because he also, which I thought was a very poignant and symbolic measure, two things in common with The Conjuring, or one thing The Conjuring has in common with this movie, is the fight against organized religion, bureaucracy, and the power structure. And that's what Father Delaney is fighting against. Not only he's recognized there's an evil spirit in this house, and there's an innocent family that's going to pay the price. And none of these people, these higher ups in the Catholic Church, in the, you know, and I don't know necessarily how the structure priests, I'm sure there's priests that are like super priests, that's their decision supersedes, just like any kind of a, you know, board or any kind of like a hierarchy structure. But he kind of goes to bat for them, and I thought that scene was great, you know. And then later on, it didn't go anywhere. That did not go anywhere. The element of, you know, the priests coming in, because you think, okay, it's much like The Conjuring, the fight there is, we don't have enough time. This lady's possessed. She's going to self-implode. You have to be the one to deliver the exorcism instead of going to get a priest. And in Conjuring, they break it down. Like, you have to go to the Catholic Church. There has to be a period of investigation, you know, and then if they deem, okay, this is a demonic possession, then they'll come in and perform the rites. But it's like, no, like, why do you have to fight against like other people that are in the same religious organization as you? So I thought that was actually kind of poignant and kind of cool. But then it didn't go anywhere. I mean, that's literally what I just described was the point of that entire thing. And also through the through line through this movie, kind of sporadically peppered in, there's this old timer detective at the beginning that's investigating the DeFeo murders and the original Amityville or Amity murders, that just pops up throughout the course of the story. So the priest goes to these people and says, hey, we need to go. They deny him. He starts kind of losing his mind. And there are these awkward scenes between him and a younger priest, where the younger priest, I guess, takes the side of the older priests that are telling him, like, you're going crazy. And like, just because also Father Delaney used to be a clinical psychologist. So he throws that out at one point, and they don't like hearing that. They're like, oh,
I did like that scene where they kind of bring up what did they say, like his secular education,
yeah,
and pretty much how that disqualified him in their eyes of being like a priest, which he already is a priest. So I would imagine they already went through that process of saying, like, okay, yeah, he has a traditional education, let's not keep that from him becoming a father. But then they still held it against him, which I
but
just
he's
thought was
already a
weird.
priest. Like, he's already become a,
yeah,
like,
that's what I mean.
I don't know if it's called becoming a father, but he's already become a priest. So that's the other thing. But I think that was the point, was to show, like, you have a spiritual matter at hand. You have people that believe in the same thing, and they should believe that they have the power through the power of God to get rid of this thing that's happening. And so the kind of connection I saw was that, like, evil is kind of on both sides of these things. And so that plays into it. I didn't understand the scene between him and the younger priest, where the younger priest was going like, yeah, you know what, we make our own demons. That made no sense. And I feel like there's like a director's cut or something here where it connects a lot of these pieces a lot better. The priest kind of starts praying and something happens. He has this vision and he goes blind and he can't see anymore. Well, meanwhile, George and what's her name? I can't remember. Kathy. George and Kathy, there's like this great kind of slow roll of George starting to lose his mind. George starts becoming real irritable towards the kids and he kind of becomes like the bad stepdad, but you never really see him be the good stepdad. So I think this movie would have, if it would have breathed a little bit more and you kind of would have seen who George was, more of him before the possession or before he's being affected by this house. I think that would have done this movie, like it would have done James Brolin such a better, because he brought the whole thing, and the movie lives and dies really by him. And then also close second, Margot Kidder. So he starts going crazy. He keeps commenting. There's great symbolism around how cold the house is. And he keeps like feeling this need to keep feeding the fire. So the daughter starts seeing visions of like a ghost girl, which I think is like the implication is that it's one of the girls that was killed in the opening scene in the original murders. She starts seeing stuff. George starts going downhill more and more. He starts getting really sick. He's chopping wood constantly and starts giving that, that shining look to the axe. That's the other thing is like this movie kind of like is in the same vein as The Shining, and it's a much more subpar of a movie.
Yeah, and I definitely got like the same vibes from Jack losing his shit, but it was done so much better in that movie compared to this one. And then just to touch back on what you were saying about them not really showing him being a good stepdad beforehand, there's no contrast. So you didn't know if this guy was just kind of always a dick or if it was the house until he like started growing out his hair and just looked really bad. Then you're like, okay, maybe it's the house. But you, like you said, you didn't know a good version of him compared to the loose-tempered man that you saw throughout the entire movie.
Yeah, and it just like I think towards the end when he goes back and he saves the dog, that's kind of the signal that he is a good dad and he is a good stepdad. And the stuff that we see, the interactions that he has with the kids, is him being influenced by the house. But so one day his brother, I believe, comes over. They own a business, and his brother's like, "You haven't been to work. Like we had payroll. You're supposed to do payroll yesterday." And he's just despondent. George is just despondent, and the brother brings his wife with him to visit the house, and she gets out of the car, takes one look at the house, and goes, "I'm not going in there. There's something funky about it." Well, she's kind of like a medium. She is sensitive to energy or whatever you want to call it, the spirits that are in this house. So later they go back, and so George fully goes like almost totally Jack Torrance, and where The Shining is a much bigger movie because you're in this hotel, this giant hotel, and Tarantino, Kubrick really gives you the feeling of like what that would be like and kind of the maddening effect. This movie is very effective because it's closer. So as they start to unravel and as they start losing their minds, you really feel it as an audience member. And in that way, it's really well done. But there again, it just like it's too choppy. This movie was chopped up, I guarantee you. And it doesn't tell like a free-flowing story. So anyway, the brother comes back with the wife. The wife figures out because the dog is in the basement digging at a wall, and the wife that's clairvoyant comes in and goes, "There's something behind that wall. It's the path to hell." She gets possessed, and the possession tells everybody that they need to leave. So long story short, they pack up, get ready to leave. They're running out of the house. George goes back, gets the dog, takes the dog, and they drive off, and that's the end of the movie. Literally, the end was the worst part of the movie in my opinion. But there was absolutely no point to the priests. There was absolutely no point to the lieutenant or the detective. That I thought there was going to be a moment where he was going to go talk to the blind priest. Like he's purely a MacGuffin that gets you nowhere. And it just felt like this movie, like they got to the end, they're like, let's just wrap it up. Everybody wants to go home. It's a Friday. We want to get dinner with our kids. And it just sucked because there was great moments that this could have been a cool movie. Like I mentioned before, much like The Shining, you could have made it a more intimate story which I think would have played into the viewer would have played into that, much like The Shining, where, because you're sitting there going like, well, what if my house is haunted? I'll tell you what, if my house is haunted, I'm calling a youth pastor over to come bless my house, because they're going to be enthusiastic and they're not getting sick and they're not going to leave a fly infestation without telling me. They're going to be stoked to be there and they're going to bless my house. But a priest, it's like, what, you might as well have the mayor come over and bless your house. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, technically they did try to reach out to the mayor from Jaws.
True, and he's just a bad priest. Like, he had
He's
the
a
same,
bad priest, dude.
he's there's your Jaws connection. There's the Amity connection, But yeah, it overall, I would say that it's not a great movie. There's elements that are creepy, and there's cool stuff that they do. There's some really cool shots and some of the way that it's lit, some of the editing. Some of the editing is really choppy and doesn't tell a clean story. And I don't know anything really about this family. I feel like I live with them for, 28 days they're in the house. But you don't really get to know anybody. It just is like, here's the house. You should already know it's haunted because there's been murders in here. We're going to play footsie with religion, but we're going to give all the power to the demonic forces, and nobody's going to defeat the demonic forces. They're just going to run away, which I guess, like, if that's the true story, if that's really what happened, then okay, I'll meet you there. But should have taken some license, should have told a better story.
You should have made it more cinematic for sure. Is this the first, like, not haunted house movie, but like first possession haunted house movie? Because whenever I was watching this, I was kind of comparing it to Poltergeist, which I just looked up, and Poltergeist came out 3 years after. And that movie as well, I think it was far more successful at building those relationships, building the tension, and then having an epic ending. This one didn't have any of that.
Well, that's because you get to know the family. You get to know the family. You get to know the house as a character, but the house, there's characters that come in, like the clairvoyant lady. She explains what's going on. It's your house is built on an ancient Indian burial ground. They kind of played footsie with that in this too, where like that part in the basement that was the pathway to hell was an old Indian burial ground, or old, like, shamanic. There was some connection to an ancient tribe, and that spot that part of the house sat on was part of this ancient tribe ritual or something along those lines. But it was really vague, dude.
It was really vague. I feel like there was a part I didn't, like I said, I watched a few videos to kind of explain what this movie, like certain parts of this movie, and I can't remember if it was from one of those videos or if it's from the movie itself. But there was a part where it talked about the person that built this house was he a gypsy? I don't know if we're allowed to say gypsy, but was he a gypsy? And like he made like this well to hell pretty much, and that's what he based his house.
He wasn't a gypsy. He was like a Satanist, or like in practice of witch. It's like I said, it parallels very much The Conjuring. I know that the Warrens were involved in the Amityville, much like they were in The Conjuring. I thought that these two movies, I thought they were the same story but told in different ways, and I almost thought Conjuring was derivative of Amityville Horror. But they have the same kind of, in Conjuring, it's a witch that kills her firstborn son, hangs herself on the land, curses the land, so that anybody that tries to inhabit it is then haunted. And so I think that's kind of the similar thing that we have going on here.
I loved that it started with the new wife, Kathy Lutz, like questioning, like, should we buy this house? There's some murders in it. And the line that her husband says is, houses don't have memories. And I was just like, oh, you're wrong, bro.
Yeah.
And then the cat jump scare got me.
Yeah.
I don't know if it got you, but I jumped a little bit.
I did not.
And then I just have a note that says Mrs. Lutz.
Yeah. Margaret Kidder is a looker, dude.
She's a looker, dude. Another line that I loved.
Hold on. Was there an implication that was she a dancer that jacked up her leg? And because she had that scene where she's in the mirror and she's kind of posing like a dancer, and she's got a brace on the leg, but they never said anything about it. They never said
anything. That was whenever he was like being a creep and like standing in the doorway watching her. Right?
He's like, oh, Mrs. I'll watch you all the time. That's literally the line. He's like, I watch you all the time.
It was weird, but I remembered it was a 70s.
I mean, they're married. I would hope so. I have a note that the nun, when they cut to when Kathy goes to the church and she's trying to find Father Delaney, and she talks to the younger priest who's smoking a cigarette, which is always weird for me to see a person of the clergy smoking a cig. But there's a nun in the B-roll playing basketball, and she's got a better shot than Ben Simmons, dude. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah,
I bet her field goal percentage is much higher.
one of the YouTube things I watched was making fun of the movie, and it was like I didn't realize I was watching Sister Act, and I started laughing. It was a good
Yeah.
one. Another favorite part of this a movie line from this that I really loved was when the boys heard that their aunt, the nun, was coming, and one of the boys yells out, "The aunt is always pinching me," and I thought that was so funny, dude.
Yeah.
It was good.
I have another note. Like, at the end, in the third act of the movie, when they're escaping the house, the walls start to bleed, which was a terrible effect. Let's just put it out there. I know this movie was made in, the 70s, different time. That would have been CG and looked just as terrible, but for a different reason. But I couldn't help thinking to myself, you know what? This movie in this moment has really convinced me that HOAs are a necessary evil. Because an HOA would never let a house have bleeding walls,
That's true.
George would get a knock on the front door. It's like, "Hi, George, your walls are bleeding an awful lot in there, and the neighbors are starting to notice it from the street. Can you either get the house to stop bleeding or at least make it so that we can't just see it from the street? Thanks, George." And then they'd put notices on his house.
You will be fined.
My last note is George Lutz, who owns a surveying company, is the worst surveyor of all time.
That's fair, dude.
He couldn't even spot a haunting, dude, in the house he was buying. All that being said, I would have done exactly what they did. I would live in a house where something horrific had happened.
You would for the discount?
I would for the discount, especially if it came with land, dude, and a boathouse.
The note that I have for my favorite scene was the fireplace scene. The way that they filmed it behind the fire was so cool, dude. And like you could that was the most powerful scene, I think, of like him changing into this kind of demented soul in this house. And the imagery was outstanding, dude. That scene alone, I wish the entire movie was that good, because it wasn't.
I totally agree with you. Another thing I'll say is, like, towards the end, like the last 15 minutes, she starts getting into investigating the history of the house. That should have been like the through line throughout the entire. As soon as something weird happened, she should have started investigating, teamed up with the detective, and the detective has all the knowledge from the murders. The detective looks at George and goes, "You look just like the guy that killed his whole family." So there's that connection there, and they just did nothing with it. There was nothing. Like, I couldn't believe when the movie rolled credits that was the end of the movie, because there's absolutely no payoff. And maybe, the filmmakers go, "Well, it's realism. That's what happened in real life." But like, you're making a movie, so you're going to have to add some creative license. And I just hate when religion and the power of God is used in a way that's serving towards the evil, but not the good. And that's what I feel like this whole movie pretty much did, but without good special effects, Okay, out of 5, I'll give this movie a 2.
I'm with you on that one.
I'll throw it on in the background. Oh, one other thing to note, I thought the score was very good. The way music was used in this was really good. The little kids singing at the right moments. And then they also used no score very effectively as well. Because I think for as good as scores enhance the moment and the feeling and the vibe of the scene and the emotion, having no score also does that. It accomplishes the same thing on a different level. And I thought this movie did a really good job of that.
I'll probably watch the Ryan Reynolds?
Yeah.
Was he? Yeah. I would probably watch that one over this one if I'm going to put this on at all. That's where I'm at.
All right.
So maybe I might even go 1.5 instead of a 2.
Oof, dude, the longer this goes on, I'm going to end it, because the longer it goes on, the less you're going to score. I'm sticking with my 2. I think that's solid. But thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks for, again, happy Halloween, happy October, happy fall. If there's movies that you want us to watch or movies that you want to suggest that maybe we've never seen, put them in the comments. Let us know what you think about the Amityville Horror. If we're off base, if there's something that we're completely missing, edify us. Tell us what we're missing. Call out scenes or sequences that maybe we just glossed over, we didn't understand. But we appreciate you watching, and we'll be back here on Sunday, and we come on back. If you haven't, like and subscribe. Thanks, Vince. Thanks for joining.
Bye. Have a good night, dude.
Confessions of a Film Author.